He had 12 hours left. Not to make peace. Not to confess. Not even to say goodbye. Just one last request before the clock ran out. He wanted to see his dog. But this wasn't just any dog. This was Rex, a retired K-9 officer. The partner who had once saved lives, taken down criminals, and now might be the only one who could save him. What happened next? It exposed a truth so explosive it shook an entire city, and forced us to ask, what do we really know about justice, loyalty, and love? Marcus Hale wasn't just another cop. He was the guy who ran into burning buildings, even when it wasn't part of his job. The one who showed up to neighborhood cookouts just to check on the kids. To his precinct, he was a mentor. To the community, he was a protector. To his daughter, he was a hero. For 15 years, Marcus wore the badge like a second skin. Officer, sergeant, mentor, friend. And then one night, it all burned down. The headlines hit like a bomb. Officer kills partner in cold blood. The image of Marcus, handcuffed, bruised, eyes hollow, was plastered across every screen in the country. The man who once gave everything to uphold justice was now accused of its worst betrayal. His partner, Lieutenant Aaron Voss, had been shot dead in a deserted warehouse. No witnesses. No camera footage. Just Marcus, standing over the body, weapon in hand. And beside him, Rex, his loyal K-9, injured and trembling. The prosecution didn't need to work hard. Marcus never spoke. Not during the investigation. Not at trial. Not even when they offered him a deal to plead guilty in exchange for life instead of death. He just stayed silent. To the public, he was a monster hiding behind a badge. To the media, a perfect villain. Talk shows speculated endlessly. Was it jealousy? A fight over corruption? A mental breakdown? No one knew. And Marcus wasn't saying. He refused interviews. Ignored letters from advocacy groups. He even stopped replying to his daughter's handwritten notes, the ones she kept sending, year after year, begging for the truth. And so the silence grew louder. Until one day, 12 hours before his execution, Marcus asked for something. Not a lawyer. Not a priest. Not even a call home. Just one thing. I want to see Rex. The dog. The only living soul who had been there that night. The one witness no one ever questioned. That request set off a chain of events no one saw coming. One that would tear open a sealed case, expose a web of corruption, and prove that sometimes the only way to speak the truth is through loyalty that never left. No one saw it coming. Not the warden, who had processed 100 final hours before this one. Not the guards, who had come to believe Marcus Hale was incapable of speech, let alone emotion. Not even Marcus himself, who had convinced his heart to go numb long ago. But as the clock inched toward midnight, with just 12 hours left on the warden's clipboard and the air around him thick with finality, something shifted. For the first time in 7 years, Marcus spoke. 4 words. I want the dog. The room froze. The chaplain glanced up from his Bible. The prison doctor blinked. Even the death row guard, who had heard everything from screams to sobs, stared like he'd seen a ghost. They offered him a priest. He declined. They asked about a last meal. He shook his head. They brought up a phone call. He didn't answer. All Marcus wanted was Rex. Rex, the retired K-9 unit who had once been more than a partner. He'd been a shadow, a guardian, a lifeline. Trained to take bullets, sniff out danger, and follow Marcus into hell if needed. And he had. That night in the warehouse, When blood spilled and careers ended, Rex had been there. He'd seen what no human had, fought what no camera recorded. And in the aftermath, when Marcus was dragged away and branded a killer, Rex had been reassigned, silenced, forgotten. But dogs don't forget. And neither had Marcus. He hadn't spoken Rex's name in years, hadn't dared to hope. But now, in these final hours, he needed something, someone, that reminded him he was still human. He needed to see the only soul who had stayed loyal when the world had turned its back. The prison bureaucracy scrambled. There were no rules for this. No boxes to check labeled request, retired police dog. But someone called someone. Strings were pulled. Favors exchanged. And by some miracle stitched together with urgency and unease, Rex was coming. Neither the prison nor the city had any idea what that reunion would trigger. That it would become far more than a final goodbye. Because what walked into that cell wasn't just a dog. It was the truth, with a heartbeat and a wagging tail. If you are enjoying this story, please like and subscribe to the channel. Let's continue. After Marcus's arrest, Rex was reassigned to another handler, Officer Taggart, a young rookie eager to prove himself. But something wasn't right. Rex wasn't the same. He refused basic commands. Ignored orders he once followed without hesitation. He'd snap at shadows, bark at empty corridors, stare down closed doors like they might open if he just waited long enough. The department tried to explain it away. Trauma, they said. Retirement looming. Old age. But those who had worked with Rex knew better. He was grieving. Not just the loss of his partner, but the injustice of it all. Dogs may not understand words, but they understand betrayal. For 7 long years, Rex was passed around. First reassigned. Then retired. Eventually, he was left in a dusty back lot of the K9 Unit's training facility. Quiet, solemn, forgotten. Until one cold evening, an unmarked van pulled into the loading dock of Blackridge State Prison. Inside was a soldier waiting for orders he thought would never come. When Rex stepped out of the van, the prison yard went silent. He moved slowly, head low, body tense. His nose twitched as he caught the scent of cement, steel, and something buried deep, familiarity. The guards didn't know what to make of it. They weren't used to dogs in maximum security, let alone one like this. Whispers echoed down the cell block. Inmates leaned through the bars to catch a glimpse. To them, it wasn't just a dog. It was a ghost of the past. A living relic from the night everything changed. Marcus stood behind the glass at first, wrists cuffed, eyes fixed on the floor. He hadn't asked if Rex would come. He hadn't dared to hope. But when the heavy doors slid open, and he heard the soft, clicking paws against the linoleum, he looked up. Their eyes met. Rex stopped dead in his tracks, muscles tight, ears forward. For a heartbeat, the entire world paused. Then, he ran. Not with violence. Not with suspicion. But with desperation, tail wagging furiously, claws skidding against the floor, a broken whimper escaping his throat as if years of silence were pouring out all at once. He crashed into Marcus's legs, whining, pawing, circling him like a pup who just found home again. Marcus dropped to his knees. The guards reached for their batons, instinct. But then they saw it. Marcus wasn't a threat. He was weeping. Big, heaving sobs. The kind that come from years of silence cracking all at once. He wrapped his arms around Rex, burying his face in the thick fur of the only creature who never stopped believing in him. For a long time, neither of them moved. Just man and dog, broken, but together. And then, finally, Marcus whispered. "I didn't kill him," he said, voice trembling. "And Rex knows it." It wasn't a confession. It wasn't a plea. It was something deeper. A truth pulled from the very core of who Marcus was. And in that moment, the world began to shift. Because if Rex knew the truth, if Rex had never stopped fighting it, then maybe Marcus wasn't the monster they said he was. Maybe justice had gotten it wrong. And maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late to set things right. Rex couldn't testify. He couldn't write a statement or sit in a courtroom. But what happened next would become the spark that lit a firestorm. After that emotional reunion, one of the younger guards, Officer Morales, couldn't shake what he'd witnessed. "That dog, he knew him," he said later. "That wasn't some trained reaction. That was loyalty. Raw, gut-deep loyalty. You can't fake that." Morales started digging. Off the record. Quietly. He pulled the old case files, video logs, handler notes, anything related to the night Lieutenant Aaron Voss was killed. And in those dusty boxes, buried behind legal jargon and redacted memos, he found something strange. Rex's behavioral reports, immediately after Marcus's arrest, were inconsistent with trauma. They weren't the reactions of a dog mourning a fallen partner, but of a dog witnessing something wrong. He refused to obey Voss's replacement officers. He growled at certain badge numbers, barked only in certain hallways. He'd freeze up near officers connected to the warehouse raid that ended in bloodshed. There was one entry, dated 2 weeks after Marcus's sentencing, where Rex attacked an officer during training. That officer had testified against Marcus. The report was quietly buried. Labeled aggression due to PTSD. No follow-up. But Officer Morales saw a pattern. Rex wasn't reacting randomly. He was remembering. And then came the breakthrough, an overlooked body cam log from the night of the shooting. A feed that had cut out due to technical failure. But the audio file had been partially recovered. In the last few seconds, just before the shots rang out, a voice could be heard. It wasn't Marcus's. It was Voss. And someone else. Arguing. "You think you can shut me up?" One voice snarled. "They'll bury this, Aaron. Just like everything else." And then, bam, bam. The sound of gunfire. Then barking. Snarling. And silence. The voice wasn't Marcus's. And if it wasn't Voss who fired first, then someone else had been there. Someone who never made it into the reports. Morales took the file to a retired detective who had worked cold cases. The man spent a night listening, reviewing, rereading. "This case was rushed," he said flatly. "Tied up in weeks. They wanted Marcus gone fast." "Why?" Morales asked. "Because dead men don't talk. And loyal dogs can't testify." But Rex had never stopped telling the truth. With every bark, every growl, every refusal to sit when the wrong man gave a command. He remembered. Not just the night, but the people, the fear, the moment Marcus was framed and taken away. The revelations cracked open a case long thought closed. And suddenly, the city had a choice to make: keep the illusion of justice, or face the truth unleashed by a dog who had never forgotten. And the man who never spoke, but finally had someone to speak for him. If you are enjoying this story, please like and subscribe to the channel. Let's continue. It started with a dog's growl. And now, it was echoing through the entire city. The audio files. The behavioral patterns. The buried reports. Officer Morales and the retired detective compiled it all into a confidential dossier, a roadmap of suppressed evidence, misdirection, and something darker lurking behind the official narrative. They presented it to the state attorney's office. At first, it was dismissed. Another conspiracy theory. Another desperate attempt to save a dead man walking. But then the whistleblower came forward. A former forensics analyst who had worked on the original case. She'd been young, nervous, fresh out of training. Back then, she'd noticed an inconsistency in the ballistic report, something off about the angles, the gun residue. She flagged it. Her supervisor buried it. And she was reassigned the next day. "I thought maybe I was wrong," she said. "But when I saw that dog on the news again, something in my gut told me the case wasn't closed." Now it was undeniable. Ballistic data proved the shots came from two different firearms. But only one was ever submitted into evidence, Marcus's service weapon. The second, it was never logged. Never recovered. Surveillance from a nearby traffic cam, overlooked during the original investigation, showed a black SUV parked outside the warehouse that night. Its plates traced back to a shell company owned by a private contractor linked to the police union's internal affairs unit. And who approved the warrant for that warehouse raid? Lieutenant Voss himself. The deeper they looked, the more rot they uncovered. Voss had been planning to blow the whistle on a bribery ring, dirty money filtering through evidence lockers, hush payments to cover internal abuses, backdoor deals between officers and drug traffickers. He'd collected files, hidden backups, told Marcus he was preparing to go public. That night at the warehouse, it wasn't just a raid. It was a setup. But Voss wasn't supposed to die. Marcus was. Someone panicked. Shots were fired. Voss went down. Marcus survived. And Rex attacked the shooter. Left deep bite marks on their arm. That detail, too, was erased from the final report. As the truth spread, public pressure exploded. News stations replayed the footage of Rex's reunion. Talk shows debated the evidence. Hashtags flooded social media. #FreeMarcus. #JusticeForVoss. #TrustTheDog. Within 48 hours of the new report going viral, the governor issued a stay of execution, just 4 hours before Marcus was scheduled to die. It wasn't an exoneration. Not yet. But it was enough to reopen the case. Marcus, after 7 years of silence, was transferred to a secure holding facility and placed under protective custody. And Rex? He never left his side. The system that had buried Marcus alive was now under fire. Investigations were launched. Retired officers subpoenaed. One by one, the pieces fell. And the one witness they never thought to call became the key to unraveling it all. A man forgotten. A truth ignored. A dog who never stopped remembering. This wasn't just about justice anymore. It was about reckoning. Because if they could do it to a cop like Marcus Hale, how many others had they silenced? And how many still sat behind bars, waiting for someone, anyone, to believe them? They called it a miracle. The way the story broke. The way Marcus Hale's execution was stopped by a dog's loyalty, a whistleblower's courage, and a city too outraged to remain silent. But for Marcus, it wasn't a miracle. It was a reckoning. The weight of 7 years of silence was crushing. The guilt. The regret. The question that haunted him, should he have spoken sooner? Could he have saved Aaron Voss, and countless others, if he just told the truth? But words were never his refuge. His voice had been stolen by fear and betrayal. But now, with Rex at his side, something shifted inside him. His protector. His witness. His friend. Marcus knew the time had come to speak, to tell the world what happened that night, not just through legal loopholes and second-hand reports, but from his own lips. The press conference was held in a small, sterile room, crowded with reporters, cameras, and flashing lights. Marcus sat at the front, hands clasped, face weary but determined. Rex lay beside him on the floor, alert but calm, as if he too knew this moment had arrived. The room fell silent when Marcus spoke. For the first time in years, his voice rang clear and steady. "I didn't kill Aaron Voss," he began, his voice low but unwavering. "He was my partner. My brother. We went into that warehouse together. But we didn't leave together. What happened that night wasn't an accident. It wasn't a botched raid. It was a betrayal. One that cost me everything, and it cost Aaron his life. But Aaron knew. He knew what we were up against. And when he told me he was going to expose it all, he meant it. But the higher-ups couldn't let that happen. Not without losing everything. So they made me the scapegoat. And Rex was there. He saw the truth. He saw who pulled the trigger. But they couldn't silence him. Not completely. They erased the evidence. They erased the witnesses. But they couldn't erase the bond between a man and his dog. Marcus's words rippled through the crowd, heavy and raw. Some were skeptical. Some cried out for justice. Some, perhaps, were finally ready to listen. But it wasn't just Marcus's story that hit them, it was the way Rex sat beside him, unwavering, like a silent witness to the truth. Rex's steady presence became the symbol of everything Marcus had been through, the lies, the fear, the betrayal, and ultimately, the loyalty that kept him alive. Through all the years of neglect, of being written off as just a dog, Rex had never given up. He hadn't stopped fighting for the truth. He hadn't stopped waiting for the moment when Marcus would finally get a chance to clear his name. In that moment, the bond between them wasn't just a man and his dog. It was a testament to resilience, to survival, to an unbreakable trust that refused to die, no matter the odds. If you are enjoying this story, please like and subscribe to the channel. Let's continue. The fallout was swift. Public support surged for Marcus, but the system was slow to respond. The investigation was reopened. The officers who had played a role in the cover-up were scrutinized, one by one. And as the pieces of the conspiracy fell into place, the case of Marcus Hale became a turning point. But even as the truth came to light, Marcus and Rex knew this wasn't just about clearing his name. It was about more than that. It was about redemption, his, Aaron's, and even Rex's. Because Marcus realized something. The truth wasn't just his to tell. It was for everyone who had ever been wronged by a system that was supposed to protect them. It was for every person whose voice had been silenced by lies, by power, by fear. And for Rex, his partner, his friend, his saving grace, this was their moment to be heard. Not as victims. Not as pawns. But as warriors who had fought and never stopped believing in the truth. The system had failed Marcus Hale. But the bond between a man and his dog was something the system couldn't break. They had been through hell. But now, they were finally on the other side, together. And for Marcus, as he looked down at Rex, it wasn't just about getting out of prison. It was about getting his life back. Not as a cop. Not as a convict. But as a man who had been through the fire, and survived. The investigation into the night of Aaron Voss's death continued for months. New evidence flooded in. The officers responsible for the cover-up were either suspended or arrested. And the man who had once been condemned to die now stood at the center of a storm, his name cleared, his past torn apart and reassembled in the light of truth. But for Marcus Hale, the real battle wasn't over. Despite the public's support, despite the overturned conviction, Marcus was still haunted by the man he had lost. The one person he couldn't save. Aaron Voss had been more than a partner, more than a colleague. He had been Marcus's closest friend. And now, the truth about his death had been set free, but the weight of that loss, the betrayal, lingered. Late one night, months after his release, Marcus sat on the porch of a small house he'd moved into, far from the life he'd once known. Rex was curled up at his feet, his head resting on Marcus's boots. The house was quiet, peaceful, a stark contrast to the years of turmoil. But even in the quiet, Marcus couldn't escape the past. The nightmares still came, visions of that night. The fear, the confusion, the gunfire. And Aaron, his face frozen in shock. He never talked about it. Not to reporters. Not to his family. And certainly not to Rex. But Rex had always been there, through the silence. Through the bad nights. Through the moments when Marcus felt like he was drowning. The dog who had never let him fall. One morning, months after the case had been reopened, Marcus stood in the backyard with Rex, watching the sun rise over the horizon. He had a choice now. A new life. A chance to rebuild. But part of him still wanted answers, answers he would never get from the past. From the men who had betrayed him. From the people who had failed Aaron. But Rex, as always, was content simply to be by his side. His loyalty, unwavering. His love, unconditional. And in that moment, Marcus realized that maybe, just maybe, the answers didn't matter as much as he thought. Maybe the truth wasn't about justice in the eyes of the law. Maybe it was about peace. Marcus Hale had been many things: a cop, a hero, a prisoner, a man with a broken soul, trying to put the pieces back together. But now, with Rex by his side, he was something more. He was a man who had lived through betrayal, through loss, through silence. And still, he stood. And in the end, Marcus knew that he had something far more important than justice. He had redemption. He had the love of a dog who had never given up on him. And that, Marcus realized, was enough. Marcus and Rex's story didn't end in a courtroom, or with a final verdict. It ended in the quiet peace of two souls who had fought through everything, together. Because sometimes, the most important thing you can hold on to isn't a badge or a title or even the past. It's the bond you share with the one who never stops believing in you. A dog. A partner. A friend. The story of Marcus Hale and Rex is more than just a tale of justice. It's a story about loyalty, redemption, and the unbreakable bond between a man and his dog. It's a reminder that sometimes the truth isn't found in courtrooms or legal documents. It's found in the hearts of those who refuse to let go. And for Marcus and Rex, their story was never about a death sentence. It was about a second chance. Together. What would you do if you were wronged? If the world turned its back on you, but you had someone by your side who never gave up on you? A dog. A partner. A friend. Marcus and Rex's story is a powerful reminder that loyalty, love, and redemption can sometimes be the only things that keep us going. No matter the odds, no matter how much time passes, the truth has a way of coming to light. But what about the people whose stories we never hear? The ones whose voices are silenced by a system that was meant to protect them? If you've ever faced injustice, or felt like the world was stacked against you, we want to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and let us know how you feel about Marcus and Rex's story. And if you believe in the power of second chances, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Join us on this journey, because the truth deserves to be heard. And remember, loyalty doesn't come with conditions. It's not about what you've done. It's about who's still standing beside you when it all falls apart. Thank you for watching. Stay strong and keep fighting for what's right. Please like this video and subscribe to this channel for more interesting stories. I will see you in the next one.